Please welcome Executive Vice President, Chief Communications Officer, Gary White.
I'm here to warn you all that Blake runs a tight ship. So you need to come in and take your seats and get ready for our next speaker. That means you, Vince. Good morning, everybody. I'm happy to be here to introduce our next speaker, someone who is, I think, one of the most engaging speakers I've heard anywhere, and one of the best people I know who is fully prepared to address the really big questions facing business and media today. What's next? What does the future look like? And finally, what the heck is going on? He's the founding executive director of the Institute for Innovation and Tech Entrepreneurship at the Illinois Institute of Technology and was the first cross-disciplinary university professor appointed at IIT. He served as the longtime CEO of 1871 in Chicago, an entrepreneurial hub for digital startups, and he is the current managing partner for Chicago High-Tech Investment Partners and G2T3V, two early-stage venture funds. He's even served as the CEO of a culinary school, Kendall College in Chicago, which is where I first met him, though I doubt he remembers that. During the course of his career, he's been an educator, an author, a venture investor, a technology advisor, and a business leader. He teaches regularly on the subjects of innovation, change management, and entrepreneurship at Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management. I first saw him speak 3 or 4 years ago, and I'm delighted he's joining us today. As you might have guessed from the title of this session on the agenda, in addition to being thought-provoking, he's a bit of a provocateur in the best sense of the word. So with that, here to make sense of everything, please welcome Howard Tullman to the podium.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Perry, for having me back. I guess that's some proof that I survived the last talk. And Mary reminded me that the last talk was somewhat between WTF and crazy time, with a little Chicken Little thrown in. So I'm going to try to be a little saner and a little more focused today. What I really want to do is give you some tools going forward, tell you what I think is coming down the pipe, give you some tools to think about that, and then show you some examples of companies that are out there doing things that I think ultimately are going to impact your business as well. And the trick will be sort of in the mode of homework. So you've got pads in front of you. Now, let me take a moment to tell you about pads. We have 37 companies in my portfolio, and they're distributed pretty much across an age band. But when we have grown-ups come for meetings, the first thing we have to do is tell them that the younger people in the meeting who are on their phones are actually taking notes, because otherwise they'd say that dirtbag is looking at social media or sending email or whatever. The people who are scribbling on a pad, even if they're doodling, they're ahead of the game. So please think about this. I want you to leave here with 5 or 6 ideas. And the idea particularly is to take these things away, go take a look at these companies, see what they're doing, why they're doing it, how they're doing it, whether you can use what they're doing, whether you can rip off what they're doing, perfectly fine. Entrepreneurs do it every single day, beg, borrow, or steal. But grow, because it's not enough to sort of hang around. There's a staggering amount of stuff out there. The information flow today is frightening. But the good news is tomorrow there'll be different things, so don't worry about those things. Here's the trick. I don't usually come to these talks and try and talk to you about your core business. I figure you know what's going on in your core business. What I want to do is encourage you to look at the edges, to look at the people who are outside of the day-to-day focus, and to really bring that into your thinking. And there's a reason to worry about this stuff. It makes you make better decisions across the board, not even a close question. When we think about the way we go about business deciding, It's really interesting. Usually we look at what's on the table, and maybe we'll look at something that's a little bit beyond that relatively infrequently. And in terms of looking at a whole bunch of different things, we're too busy. We're like, no, you know, maybe I can accommodate one little idea, but don't mess my mind up with like 17 different alternatives. That's too much. But the truth is that today, because of technology, because of the changes that are going on, everything doesn't have to be either or. We can really think more effectively, and we can look at basically options that we never really considered before, but you need to know about them. And when you do that, it's really interesting. The math is very clear. If you think of one alternative, you have about a 50-50 failure rate. If you look at two, you've got about a 66% success rate. So that's the goal. And I work every day. 1871 has about 500 technology companies. They're all little guys. They're all coming from the bottom up. And you know this drill. First you laugh at them, and then you say, these people are crazy, and then you eventually say, maybe we better take a little closer look. And that's how the process works. I always love the story of Netflix. But every day this happens. Let's be clear. Every day, people who think that they were absolutely on top of the world, discover that maybe that's not the case. Maybe there's a few new, things that we have to think about. And one of my favorite is the Times, which said, this whole internet thing is, just gonna not really hang around very long. So we know it, we live it every day, whether it's Uber, interesting thing, Uber, huge success, a TV show now called Super Pumped, I think. But today, I'll tell you that Uber's new business, Eats, is eating the lunch of the basic business. So just an example. And again, nothing stands still. So we're going to see home deliveries now. We're going to see drones. We're going to see in every single industry, autonomy, AI, these new kinds of technologies are going to drive what's going on. In the trucking industry, to give you an idea, we're already seeing these trucks. You may not notice these trucks, but there are driverless trucks on most of the major interstate highways now. They stay to the highways for the moment because they're relatively predictable. But you're looking at tens of thousands of drivers, and it's not clear how much longer they're going to be anything more than maybe glorified passengers. Now, some of these guys definitely need to get out of the truck. There's no question. But the idea is that change is the only constant in our life. And if you win, and you guys have assembled an enterprise that's on a scale to talk about winning. When you win, the numbers are amazing. You look at Apple today. Apple's profit last year, larger than all of these companies combined. And so when we look out there at everybody walking around with a laptop, one of the things that's happening right now is you think it's your laptop. It's not really your laptop, okay? And it's not really your phone. It's not really your books. It's not really your music. We're sort of the borrowers these days. We're sort of entitled to use it until we stop paying for it. And we're seeing the changes that this is bringing about in every kind of industry. So the ad business, the gold standard used to be the New York Times, $500 million of revenue. Today, Microsoft itself does a mere $10 billion. Amazon does $31 billion in a throwaway business. They don't even talk about the ad business. They talk about AWS. They talk about the commerce business. Oh, ads, 60 times the times. Now, Amazon doesn't get everything right, interestingly enough. Now, there's such an irony to hearing that Amazon is closing its bricks and mortars bookstores, having killed like 10 billion other bookstores. They figured out there's something tough about this bricks and mortar business. But they change. And the smart thing about Jeff is he changes on just all the time. I mean, they look at things, they spend enormous amounts of money, they try things, and then if they don't work, they move on. And it's clear, nobody likes change. I mean, I get that babies like change, but the truth is, change isn't hard, okay? What's hard is overcoming this resistance to basically what worked really well for you before, okay? Because we suffer from inertia, which is, in a sense, a good thing. I mean, we're happy with what got us here. And the scary thing is that some of that stuff will get in the way of moving forward, okay? No guarantees going forward. And frankly, if you need to innovate, if you need to advance new ideas, you need to do that basically in spite of the fact that things are working great now, in spite of the fact that you're supposed to be head down, quarter focused. That's not enough to get you protected and growing going forward. So I like to say that change is always expensive. You know, you either pay to get it done or you pay because you haven't gotten it done. And people today don't change because it's a good idea. They change when they feel the pressure. And so in almost every industry, we describe the heat as 4 different sort of things. Number one is you're going to have to reconnect after 2 really tough years of COVID with your customers and with your employees. And the employee part is as important, frankly, as the customers and the consumer part. Trust, completely out the window these days. And you heard before in the presentation about trusted, local news being trusted, critically important going forward. Number 2, privacy, confidentiality, cybersecurity, huge issues, going to require enormous steps in order to protect your core enterprises. Number 3, all kinds of new competition out of, you know, big, little, different, new sectors. And lastly, new technologies. And, you know, we talk about new technologies a lot. And all of these are vectors that you're going to have to deal with as the world rolls forward. Now, it turned out it was easy for God to create the world in 6 days. He had basically no regulators. He had no legacy systems that I know of, not this entrenched base of customers, and no social media, you know. But just to take regulations for a minute, take a look at this, and you wonder why technology companies have it so easy. It's because regulation lags innovation and everything else by decades. So we'll catch up with them eventually, for better or for worse. We'll catch up with these, you know, guys around privacy and around some of these other things. But for now, they have a clear field, and you know, this is the absolute, you know, story of asking for forgiveness, not permission. They do it, and then they worry about it. And so that's not something that grown-up businesses can do. So you need to have a whole lot of better strategies around innovation, and also you need to figure out how do you take advantage of the fact that other people out there have taken the risks, and now they've become reasonable players in the space, and oh, let's go buy them. Let's go make them a part of our story. And I'll talk to you about a few of those companies today that I think are important for you to take a really close look at. So this future is not going to be a little bit different. You know, we think as humans, we think that technology is going to make a big, you know, impact in our lives in the first 10 minutes. Rarely does, but over time it makes a much larger thing. And you know, when people talk to me about 5-year plans, I sort of laugh. I mean, we're convinced that even 3-year plans are beyond any reasonable ability to really predict, especially in today's world, but it does make a business for astrologers. So, you know, I like to say that as of today, we live in the most temporary time that we ever have. The stock market is a very good example of this. If you are familiar with Robinhood, 22 million brokerage accounts opened by a bunch of kids. Half of them had never invested before. This is what they did for the last 2 years. You know, there wasn't sports, there wasn't a lot of other stuff. They became investors, okay? And resisting these kinds of changes is almost impossible. I'll give you a simple example. I was in the car business for about 50 years now, and Carfax came along, and I had at that time 22,000 car dealers as my customers, and they all hated Carfax. Carfax was going to like tell you the scoop about that used car. And it was like, get that guy out of here. I never want to see him. That's the craziest thing in the world. That's an unbelievable thing to turn off my customers. Today, you pretty much can't go into a dealership that doesn't say on the window, Carfax, we'll give you that guarantee, we'll give you that assurance. Now, what happened was when the dealers turned us down 150% of the time, we went directly to the consumer. And so that's part of the process, is you're going to solve the problem. You just have to figure out how to solve the problem. Change today is what we call autocatalytic. It means that every change makes the next change faster. But the standard that we use when we look at value creation isn't how fast are you moving, it's how are you getting faster. And how quickly are you doing that? How are you adapting? And if you look around and the other folks are doing it better or faster, then you're probably losing ground. And I tell my kids, who are now grown-ups, sadly, that the rate of change will never be slower in their lives than it is today. And size is great, but speed is really the name of the game. And if you're not in a hurry, you know, if you're not doing everything, playing the whole game basically in overtime, then you're going to discover that basically you're going to be left behind. So being smart today is interesting. It's not about not making mistakes. It's not about different kinds of things. It's about getting ahead of the game. And so when you think about technology in particular, what I would tell you is don't just say, I can use this system to get a little bit better at what I've done. Think about a world where you say, it's now possible for me to do things that I never even imagined I could do before. And that's the nature of the world we live in. I mentioned this before, this idea of usership versus ownership. Look at what's going on. Look what's going on. And this slide, I realize we're in a Marriott, so you know, I'll say this quietly. So this is an idea about the world of employees, okay, and how technology has sort of changed that world. Marriott and Hilton combined, almost 500,000 employees. Airbnb, with a market cap in excess of their combined market cap, 5,600 employees. This is the scale. This is what's going on now. And this is how change is happening. And there isn't an industry that's protected. Nobody can go back. You know, this is a chart we did recently on the fact that all the stocks are in the toilet, you know, for the moment. The interesting question is, and again, this is not financial advice, but the interesting question is who's coming back? So who in the course of COVID actually built on and created expectations and solid business propositions? So, you know, if it were me going through this list, I tell you that Zoom is here to stay. PayPal is here to stay. You know, DocuSign. I mean, this is great. I wrote a piece not too long ago about how in the world could we still have notaries when we have DocuSign. You know, you sign these things on the computer all day long, but you have to take $5 and go find the last human being in your 40-story office building who has that stupid stamp to notarize something. What world is this, okay? So I wouldn't invest in notaries anytime soon. But the last thing is teledoc and telemedicine, because boy, has COVID changed this. The insurance companies were death on telemedicine until COVID came around. They wouldn't reimburse, they wouldn't support it, they wouldn't do one thing. Today, 75% of the time, you don't need to go to the doctor. For almost any ailment, any traditional ailment, forget just immediate care, you don't need to go anywhere. You've got the ability to use that powerful phone. You've probably seen the ad for this thing. It's a little device. You put your thumbs on, it'll do heart measurements for you. So all of these things are the context today that we're looking at going forward and what our world is going to look at. So I want to shift now, because one of the biggest challenges you're going to have as management and as senior management is to figure out how are you going to deal in this new world with the people who work with you and for you, okay? And so as Gary said, I've come up with sort of a dozen propositions, and I want to share them with you and also share with you some of these examples of how I think the world needs to go. And frankly, here's the truth. Somebody's going to eat everybody's lunch, so it might as well be us doing it to ourselves. The trick is build going forward, okay? Don't try to defend the past. And the number one thing that I will tell you, the thing that you should write on your foreheads, is the scarcest thing today in our lives is time, okay? Way more valuable than money. Way more valuable than money, okay? And that's really interesting, because how that is going to ripple through all kinds of traditional behaviors we're just beginning to see. A good example, searching the internet, okay? It's easy when you're sitting on a desktop or in front of a desktop. Most of us aren't anymore, okay? So it's easy when Google comes back, and I don't know if you can read this, it says 10,900,000 responses. Oh, give me a lifetime and I'll get right through those, okay? Here's the truth. We want answers, okay? And so the phone is very powerful in what it's doing to change the way we're going to react to search, because on voice devices now, the desktop, all of this is compressing. It's a really interesting thing that's going on. And so we don't want a whole list because we're not patient enough for a whole list. We don't want 17 choices. We want an answer. And so from an advertising standpoint, you're going to see an amazing set of auctions going on now as to who gets that #1 slot. Who's the answer and what will people have to pay for it? And it's going to be amazing. And frankly, this is just the beginning of a new whole death of brands, okay? Because brands are hard to make tactile in the world of digital anyway, and in terms of online. But as voice emerges and as all these kinds of things continue to go, on Alexa we're seeing more and more opportunities where people are inquiring, and Siri the same thing, but they don't put a brand in there. And of course, guess who loves that, okay? Amazon loves that, because if you ask for batteries, that's exactly what you're going to get. If you ask for dishwasher soap, that's exactly what you're going to get. So it's hard to get a brand advantage. It's almost impossible because consumers, frankly, don't really want to spend the time. They don't want to say, I want the Jiffy peanut butter, super crunchy, extra large size. I want peanut butter, okay? And, you know, Bezos figured out another amazing thing. And this goes to this time idea. People don't care about the price of stuff. They don't want to negotiate every day. They're not going to shop every day. So brand is under tremendous pressure, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with brand. And of course, that impacts the nature of advertising, okay? The second thing that's radically changed is loyalty, okay? Trust and loyalty combined. Today, the way I would describe customer loyalty is I just haven't seen a better alternative yet, okay? And understand how valuable a customer is, a retained customer. It's enormously valuable to hold on, and you heard how powerful it is as part of the Nexstar financial model, that recurring revenues are a huge component, okay? Because that's exactly what you're seeing here. It generates dollars and dollars, chasing new business, costly, difficult. In a lot of industries, there's not even new business to be had to any substantial extent. But hanging on to the customer and remembering that nobody owns that customer anymore, okay? You own the moment. And your competition, this is another sort of interesting idea, the competition is the last great experience that I had, and it doesn't matter where it was. All of a sudden, I transfer that expectation to every kind of interaction I have. So if I had a great online experience at one place, that's what I come to expect every single time in every case, because that's the nature of the customer. And so what you want to do is design what you're doing to address a world where basically we've got to exceed the customer's expectation all day long. And we know what's going on. I mean, we're drowning, okay? We're drowning in content and activity and all this stuff, and we're short on time and attention and engagement. And so basically the rule that we've come up with is a pretty simple reason and a pretty simple rule, and it's make it easy. And our metric is a funny metric. It's not Net Promoter or, you know, Schmet Promoter. We call it the Customer Effort Score. And you can test this out in your office, in your business, really easy, okay? You want to know how easy it is to do business with your business and how important that is? Just take a few of these little temperatures, okay? How many transfers does it take to get to the right person? How many times do I have to call back? How much resolution is there going on, okay? And all of these things affect the loyalty, the trust, the confidence, the returning interest that customers have, all part of this equation. So when we look at companies who are focused on that interaction, this is the first one I want to mention to you. It's called Balto, B-A-L-T-O. This is a very powerful thing, and it makes the folks that you have on the phone better, smarter, faster, and they don't have to hand anything off. And not only don't they have to hand anything off, but I mean, they actually have a system totally technologically built that permits the supervisors to be alerted to issues in ongoing conversations, so the supervisor can be right there in the conversation in the moment. There's no, let me put you on hold and I'll try to find somebody who knows the answer. So we're seeing all kinds of different tools. This is one to take a look at because this is going to be the way front ends are managed going forward. a lot of information available to your people, a lot of ability to review their performance and how well they're doing, a lot of ability, all automated, okay? So instead of having sit-downs once a month with each of your sales reps or with each of your customer support people, this is ongoing, real-time, every day, and the ability to make it better. So Balto is one, okay? And there's a lot around here, but the trick here is to understand how to position this, okay? You don't tell your people we're replacing you. You tell your people we're making you better and smarter. And so we're gonna see this. I was just talking to Gary about baseball, and you know, just to give you an idea of how technology is creeping into every part of our lives. I don't know if you know what this is, okay? But this guy doesn't have like a ridiculous growth on his left arm, this pitcher. What he's got is a device that is being deployed now in sports, and this tells him what pitch to throw. Okay? Now that's part one, okay? It tells him what pitch to throw, all right? So it can't be stolen. It doesn't depend on the catcher's memory. But here's part two. The signal isn't coming from the catcher at all. The signal is coming from the dugout, the coach, the pitching coach. Those folks are sending the signals. Now this is wild because this is one of these cases where a whole position has now semi-disappeared, okay? A whole relationship between a pitcher and catcher completely changed, okay? And that's just the beginning. I mean, we're gonna see all kinds of measurements, all kinds of new devices, and sports is just one of these areas. So gaming is really interesting, but it's the truth for every kind of content that's out there. And it all goes like this. What do I want? When do I want it? Wherever I am, without asking, okay? On my terms, I want to set the terms, I want to set the price, I want to do this in real time, and I want instant feedback, okay? So this is the new world. Excuse me, and it's a little scary. It turns out that free isn't cheap enough, okay? That soon isn't quick enough, all right? That fast isn't fast enough, all right? It's all about right here, right now. In fact, I was just at a hotel in another city, and this is the bar in the hotel. Now, I want to tell you that it comes with a little sign, and the sign says, items that are removed for longer than 45 seconds will be charged to your account. 45 seconds, okay? So you want to talk about a world that's speeding up just a tad, okay? That's the kind of crazy stuff that's going on now. All right, so take a step back, my 12 sort of points. Number one, you know, you have an organization, it's got a pretty clear mission, it's got a pretty clear thing, but it's critically important today to tell a simple story because people are bad listeners. They're overwhelmed with information, okay? And so you need to tell people inside your organization and as customers where you're headed, why you're going there. You know, people commit to these ideas. They commit to other people. And as President Clinton used to say, put the jam on the lowest shelf. But here's the truth. Numbers are important, but people don't buy into numbers. They buy into stories. And so if you want to lead today, if you want to manage these new workforces that we're dealing with, you need to show them a future, and you need to show them a path to get there, and you need to do it in relatively short order, okay? And don't confuse a simple idea with dumber, okay? The trick here is take that vision and turn it into something that you can reinforce, constantly measure, communicate, reward, and encourage, okay? Now, here's company number two, all right? We live in a world that's already semi-remote. It's only going to get more so. Your workforce is going to be all over the place. This site is getballoon.com. Now, this is the most powerful thing you're going to see today because you heard people earlier in this presentation talk about how Perry says it's so important to surface new ideas. And guess what? The best new ideas come from customers, and the best people who have customer interaction are the frontline people. And so you need a system that permits them to get those ideas up. So Balloon is an idea that basically is autonomous and anonymous surveying, so anybody in the entire company can put up a new idea, everybody else can see it, people can vote it up or down, And this is amazing because it gets around all of the traditional barriers that have gotten in the way of how we keep track of people. And now, especially when they're not in the office anymore, especially when they're all over the world, okay? So this system eliminates all of sort of the classic stuff. It's asynchronous. So 42 people don't have to get on a Zoom call, okay? It basically lets people who are embarrassed, afraid, don't want to be humiliated, are young, are new, you get all of that input, okay? And you measure it and you manage it in however you want to do it, okay? And it aligns the company because everybody isn't chasing different ideas, they're chasing important ideas. And so to give you some idea of the power of this thing, okay, the whole company has input now. Nobody is sort of not listened to because of gender issues, because of hierarchical issues, because of age issues, any of these things, okay? All the biases are gone. A good idea rises because it's a good idea, and that's impossibly rare in most companies. So these people figured out how to do that, and they have eliminated about 50% of the meetings in the major companies that work with them. Because it turns out the meetings are after the fact. I mean, if the idea is good and everybody's on board and it makes sense, you don't have to have 17 more meetings about it. You just go forward and you do it. So I like it. It's a system. It's something with remote workforces, with distributed workforces that you're going to need a system to do, and they do a really good job of it. So Balto, Get Balloon, all focused on the idea of how do I surface the best and smartest ideas in my company and how do I get around all the traditional barriers in the past. Okay, number 2, attention. Attention, as I said, in a world that time is so scarce, is way more important in a sense than money, okay? Because we're just drowning in this stuff. And so the truth is, like everybody else in the whole world, you know, we make time for what we're interested in, you know, and we expand. This is Stretch Armstrong, show you how old I am. But we're competing against everything that's out there in terms of attention, okay? Every status, every email, every phone call, every interaction. And in the attention economy, it's funny because if you think you get a break, you never get a break. You never get a break, okay? So you're either paying attention, getting attention, seeking attention, and here's the most interesting part of this dilemma, which is the context in which you're getting this information is more important than what is being said, okay? Because as my kids remind me all the time, as I try to impart considerable wisdom to them, if you're not listening, it doesn't really matter what is being said. So we measure 3 things when we talk about attention. Are we reaching the right people? Are they changing their behavior based on it? Are they reacting in important ways? So reach, resonance, and reaction, okay? And every business today needs to be building an attention strategy, okay? Importance, it is important. It's a critical asset, controlling people's attention, you know. How are we going to measure it? Make it someone's job, okay? It's not sort of a random thing. We hope people are paying attention. It's a concrete set of processes that you can do and do well. And don't think that one size fits all. It depends on a million different factors. And then ultimately, you've got to measure it and you've got to see what's working. And if you get to that point where you do it well, the rewards are substantial. If you do it poorly, and Peloton is a perfect example of somebody who did it great for a few minutes and then fell into the toilet because it was all about attention and not about delivery and not about a whole bunch of other things. So to give you just some idea of how quickly the market punishes this kind of stuff, 2,800 employees gone, stock is down to, you know, virtually nothing. So what do you do about attention? How do you take the assets you have and make them more attractive, more engaging, more connective? Here's another company. It's called Square Offs. Okay, now Square Offs sends you 1 or 2 lines of code, total story, 1 or 2 lines of code. You add it to your website, you add it to your blog page, you add it to anything you want, and it sets up these A/B kind of competitions, okay? And as soon as somebody says yes or no, it flashes back the results of what everybody else voted on, okay? And it gives them another question, so it takes them down the path. You can do it for anything. So think about what's going on here. This reinforces, in very powerful ways, the content, the news, whatever you're putting out there already. Now somebody doesn't just scan the thing, now they're engaged with this thing, okay? So immediate engagement, unlimited topics, okay? It's mobilely enabled, it provides instant feedback. It has an astonishing level of engagement, 18 plus minutes per session is what it's running now once somebody goes down one of these rabbit holes. That's longer engagement and activity than Facebook or TikTok, okay? Which are the absolute standards of how do I suck as much of your time away from you as I possibly can, okay? So it's a tool, it's an interesting experiment, you know, you can do it. And frankly, all your writers and all your content creators can do it too, because you just give them the buckets and they put the stuff in there. And lo and behold, you have people who are getting into the discussion in a very painless way, and it's all automated, and it's all easy and simple. So another tool to say, how do I make what's sitting there on the page come alive? And we call this basically smart reach. I mean, the idea is, I've got to figure out how I'm going to create engaging, relevant, customized content at the right time and the right place. If I can do that, if I can get that in front of you, I'm going to be successful. So again, what do we need? When do we need it? Wherever we are, frankly, and without asking. And again, you know, COVID has done some interesting things. One of the things that COVID has done is, and I just saw it as I was walking over here, touchless is everywhere now. You know, this is a gas pump with no less than 3 or 4 different payment systems on it. But I want to tell you about another change that's coming. It's a company called MagicCube, okay? And what they have figured out is that we spend $70 billion a year on these stupid credit card scanners that are in every restaurant, every hotel, every place in the world, and they're all going away. That business is toast, okay? Why is it toast? Because we're walking around with a phone, okay? And the employees of every major organization are going to be walking around with a counterpart phone that, through this technology, MagicCube, can scan the credit card, can deal with your digital wallet. Basically, Walmart's figured this out. They're giving 740,000 phones to their associates, personal phones. They can take them home. It's going to have the app on it, but they can do whatever else they want because they understand now that every one of these people is an in-store creator of a transaction. You don't wait in lines anymore. They got information, inventory, every kind of tool you could imagine. And frankly, this is just the beginning. We're going to see it at Home Depot. We're going to see it pretty much everywhere, and especially in restaurants. And you're starting to see this now. You know, instead of giving your credit card to somebody who disappears into the kitchen and tries to swipe it next to this machine that has been, you know, saturated by the goop from the soda machine for the last 2 years, and it comes back and it's just slightly sticky, okay? And maybe you think that that's because they put some, you know, anti-COVID stuff on it, but the truth is it's gunk. All that's going away, okay? So I say 3 years. I say that's about the horizon for a $70 billion worldwide industry to disappear. That's what we're looking at, okay? Number 3, give your customers a reason to believe and to stay. Very simple tools we use here to evaluate every business, every plan, every project that we see. Simple answers. Is it going to save me time? Is it going to save me money? Will it make me more productive? Will it help me make better and smarter decisions? Is it going to change my status? And again, every one of you, as you look at these projects, as you look at these opportunities, you want to do the same thing. We built this grid, and if you want to take a picture of anything, although I'm happy to have it sent around to everybody, this is how we look at opportunities, and this is how every business should be looking at the vectors of competition. Who are the customers? What are we offering them? When and where? And of course, that's now everywhere all the time. And how? And these are all areas where are we addressing the customer's pain? Have we offered new solutions? You know, do we have virtually unlimited access? And are we doing it at speed? And so when you look at these opportunities and you look at the spaces to think about what can I do here, what can I add to my product mix or my service mix, how am I going to do that? The thing I want you to really think about is what's your edge, not your competitive edge, your unfair edge, okay? And what does that mean? Well, it could be your connection to your customers. It could be the distribution channels you have, size and scale. You might have expertise about certain domains and certain kinds of things. It could be the platforms you've built, PR, networking, any of those things. But the bottom line is to look carefully at the opportunities, to see what your strengths are, and then how to bring them to bear on market opportunities, and to do it before somebody else does it for you. Now, the next company is called Dumbstruck, and this is almost insane because this tells your customers whether their ads suck or not, okay? Now, let me just tell you how powerful this is, because companies spend millions of dollars making ads. They spend millions of dollars making buys for the ads. And then when the ads blow up, they spend millions of dollars trying to fix the social media damage that they've suffered. This company basically eliminates that. They're able to look at these ads. They do this analytics, and it's humanized. It's based on panels that review these things. And then they're able to feed back to you what's working in the ad and what's not working in the ad. And it's an insurance policy. So imagine that somebody says to you, for 25 or 50 grand, I'll review each of your ads, and I'll save you $5 or $10 million, not to mention the harm. And if you think that this is an occasional problem, let me just tell you that nobody gets it right. Every single one of these companies had one of these things blow up in bizarre and really stupid ways, and this would have eliminated 100% of this craziness. And it's just beginning. I mean, because if anything, the level of sensitivity, the craziness of how you can offend the entire world these days is growing. So this is insurance, okay? This is insurance that your advertising is smart. And let me just tell you that it's way better to avoid these things in advance by spending a fraction of your budget. And this is something that you say to your customers, that you offer to your customers now, and say, we're a better, smarter partner for getting your message out there. You heard that TV is very important, and that we're going into a year, with political advertising, the sensitivities are going to be completely off the charts. But this company has tools that permit you to, with a straight face, say, I can work magic, okay? And we've done now, through this company, for example, we do Super Bowl ads every year. We did the Rocket Mortgage ads now for 2 years in a row, #1 ad for both years. And it's because of this testing process. And interestingly enough, the test was one of the things that told us to kill the ad after 60 seconds. This is the Barbie ad instead of 75 seconds because it was just too much. And so really amazing pieces of technology. You don't have to listen to it, okay? You don't have to believe it, but boy, does it make you smarter in terms of the ability to consult with and work with your customers. Now, the next slide was supposed to be blank, but Matt begged me. So this says, the folks of Frisco will miss you, Matt. And what I usually say at this time is, how many of you brought your TV with you? Probably nobody, okay. Cell phone, 100%, right? Now, that's the world we live in, and one of the things that I want to talk to you about is these new channels, which are, if anything, becoming more and more powerful. And the singly most important company I want to talk to you about today is called Upshow, and they did a very, very smart thing, okay? They have, at present, ballpark, okay? They have around 11,000 venues, real-world venues, 30,000 screens, and exposure to about 100 million consumers, okay? And basically, what they do is they figured out how to ride on the capital investments of basically every bar and every, essentially, every organization that's out there. And so they basically go into a place and they say, we can provide the content for your screens across an enormous dimension. Now think of those numbers, okay? 11,000 venues, 30,000 screens. This is a little company in Chicago, but they figured this out, and now they work with some of the major brands, some of the major chains in the world, and they're empowering every part of what's going on in those spaces. This new channel is ridiculously powerful. Hospitality, fitness, health and welfare, okay? And look at these numbers, okay? Look at these impressions. Now, this is just one of these examples of what's happening, because the world and COVID has, if anything, accelerated this. That little screen, believe me, is the name of the game now. And in these venues, we're able to enable and connect and offer amazing sort of different things. Lots of entertainment, obviously, but also a powerful sort of set of tools to basically say you can control multiple locations, multiple promotions, multiple measurements, huge inventory of different sort of stock stuff, QR codes, everything you want to do. And basically you hook it up with a thing that's this big. It's a Amazon Fire Stick or something like that. And so what's really happening is that's a whole new channel. That's a whole new set of eyeballs that can be activated. And that's just the front end of this system. They also have a counterpart back end of the system that deals with everything from employee training, employee encouragement, employee rewards, measurement, all kinds of alerts, education, the whole 9 yards, combined into one cloud-based digital management platform for essentially messaging to consumers and activating consumers in an amazing way. Now, some of the stuff we're also seeing, another new channel that's coming back is this idea of click on what you see and I'll take you right to a shopping site, shopping opportunity. So all of the new social media channels, probably up to a year ago, there really wasn't an e-commerce demonstrable benefit from social media directly. There wasn't an opportunity to say, we showed this and then these people bought this. Today we're seeing it increasingly, and you're going to see TV again, you know, sort of returning to this idea of a technical screen. So new channels, new technologies, new opportunities to reach and tell your story and your customers' stories to clients and consumers all over the world. Next, focus. Okay, we're drowning in opportunities, and that's the trap, okay? That feels good, but the truth is that if we're driven by crises, if we're driven by trying to do a million things, be a mile wide and an inch deep, we're doomed. So focus is really critical. Hedging, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You know, basically, if you focus, you have a chance to have a big score. If you basically try to do a little bit of everything, you're not going to get there. So what are we seeing in terms of new fintech and insurtech, for example, kinds of things? This is a company called Mile Auto. Now, Mile Auto is one of 2 or 3 of these companies that are killing the large auto insurance companies because they offer you insurance by the mile. Now, if any of you was not entirely asleep for the last 2 years, it probably dawned on you that your car was sitting in your garage the entire time while you were paying absolutely full boat to your rotten auto insurance company. And these people said, that's over, okay? Now, the big insurance companies have a tremendous problem, okay? Because every single customer that they convert to this new by the mile system, they lose that spread of what used to be charging them full boat, okay? So they're having a tremendous amount of difficulty trying to figure out how to adapt to this, and they're all going to have to go this direction. That's going to take the margins out of their business to a staggering extent. One of our big customers for this company is Porsche, because they figured out another thing. If you're driving a super luxury car, you're not driving any material distance anyway. And so it's just common sense, but this is the kind of thing that we're seeing. Same thing with homeowners insurance. We're seeing companies coming along saying, I can do this in a simple fashion for you. Same thing basically with pharmaceutical stuff now. You know, most of these companies say to the consumer, you'll pay nothing for your drugs. Nothing, not even a copay. And they figured out how to make those kinds of things work. So focusing in and doing a few things really, really well, saying, this is our story, this is what we do, this is how we help you, this is exactly why we're here, very, very critical. Now, having said that, you also have to keep raising the bar, okay? Because what was great yesterday is just sort of, you know, so what today? So I think of this as ironing, although I've never ironed anything, as you can see, in my entire life. But you go back and forth over these things, and they get smoother and streamlined, and it's a process. And I think if they teach one thing in school anymore, it ought to be this. It ought to be the way you get better is by doing stuff over and over again, and you experiment, and you measure, and you grow, and you do it again, and you keep approaching that goal. You get better by basically getting better, and it doesn't get easier. There's no finish line. But here's the dirty secret about customers, okay? Their expectations are 100% progressive, okay? They always want more. And so yesterday's miracles are just so what today. And technology is not a defense, okay? Technology operates on this curve where on day one it's magic, and on day who knows what, everybody is doing it and everybody takes it for granted. So time is an enemy in this sense. Time has a way of taking what worked for you in the past, and it's not going to work for you anymore. And you need to have a strategy of how do I improve my offerings, because if you don't, somebody else will come along and do it for you. Shoot for the stars, okay? This is sort of opportunistic. We have a simple rule here, okay? Our rule is ask for the best seat in the house. Why? Somebody's going to get it. The best seat, the best opportunity, the best, you know, whatever it is. And why shouldn't it be you, okay? So what we see in a lot of instances is people who are just ashamed to ask for that. And there's no shame in that, okay? I mean, there's plenty of people who tell you why you can't do these things. But a lot of those people who didn't believe in you on day one will spend the next, you know, decade or two telling people that they knew you when, okay? And my proof point of that is these are the guys that started Microsoft, okay? So, you know, if you had a spare dollar back then, probably not the first people you would jump all over. But look, the best way to get ahead is to get started. There's no question about it. You proceed as if it's going to happen. You keep moving forward, okay? Getting a little better all the time. In venture capital, we have something we call the J curve. And the J curve basically says most things are going to have some bumps in the road. Most things are going to get ugly before they get better. But as with all this stuff, if you don't ask, the answer is always going to be no. And it seems like it's impossible, you know, until it gets done. And so, you know, if you wait until it's perfect, it's never going to happen. And so we say, start now with what you have. This is Walton, this is Walmart, this is Jeff Bezos. These are two sort of desks that he put together with this L bracket. If that wasn't humiliating enough, he also worked at McDonald's, of course, and spilled a bunch of ketchup over everything. But the idea is to get started, okay? And try to move things forward, make some mistakes, perfectly okay. One of the reasons, again, that, you know, we encourage people to fail. That's not a bad thing, but we limit what that means, and I'll tell you that in a second. So there's a right way to do this, okay? You do the hard work of researching and finding a need, a pain point, okay? Then you basically determine, now this is part two, okay? Because there's an infinite demand for the unavailable. If you haven't had a customer say, well, if it was only Wednesday, or if it was only blue, or if it was only whatever, okay? They need to appreciate the pain, and they need to be willing to pay you a reasonable price for it, and then you launch. And that's the first generation. And then you get better and constantly improve it and fix it on the fly and understand that no idea starts out on day one as a great idea, okay? You need to build it into a successful idea, into a great business. And that takes time. And most importantly, it takes people. So in software, we've learned long ago that there is a huge crowd of unbelievably talented software programmers, engineers, scientists who don't believe that bathing is necessarily a daily function, okay? They don't believe that the hours that they're most productive might be the hours when you would like to reach them, okay? You have to make room for them, okay? You have to make room for talent and for creative people in your organization, because if you don't, you'll discover that you'll have second-rate people. Number two on this score is it turns out that in a lot of traditional businesses, like factories, basically people who were super were a multiple, but a modest multiple in terms of their contribution to the organization. In the world today, it's a whole different equation, okay? A creative person is, a super creative person is an unbelievable multiplier, an unbelievable amplifier. And I think what you'll see about the new network is it'll either prove out exactly that proposition, okay? Because you could have grown ratably, you could have added more components, but you're taking a much different leap, okay? You're saying we're going to create something new, and frankly, we know this, okay? To a moral certainty, the best workers cost less and contribute more, okay? Now, in this world that we're looking at, you know, we know now that a lot of jobs are going to be different. You know, they're going to be jobs that used to be required and take a lot of skills. I tell people all the time that car mechanics within 2 or 3 years will spend more time at a keyboard than with a wrench, okay? Bar none, it'll be all about the electronics in these machines. So we've got to watch and we've got to start to figure out how are these people shifting and how are our deeply tenured people going to be valuable for us going forward, because they're not going to be there anymore. We're going to have a new workforce. And if that wasn't scary enough, there are going to be zillions of gig workers. And, you know, frankly, we think that there are a lot of people today who are doing 2 and 3 jobs at home at the same time with maybe another phone and another computer. Because why not? Because the truth is that they've demonstrated that any kind of service or support they provide is episodic. And so they can fill in those gaps with another opportunity to do more of the same. But, you know, we're not fans of this gig economy thing, because we think that a good company builds a culture, and that culture is not something that you take for granted. So you got a bunch of people working for peanuts, and they can't even do the math. I mean, these Uber drivers have no idea of what depreciation even means, much less how little they're making. And the services keep getting crazier and crazier. This is a service. They will come to your front door. They'll pick up your laundry. They'll take it to their house and wash it and dry it and fold it and bring it back for $1 a pound. Okay? Now, I used to joke that there was eventually going to be a service that would come out and brush your teeth. I mean, we haven't seen it yet. But the point is, it couldn't get crazier and more stupid. And, you know, we're going to have to see that balance swing. But in the meantime, we also are short on real people who are real workers and real talented people. And your system has to make room for them and reward them in very significant ways. I talk about blame a lot, okay? Blame is sort of one of these issues that we deal with, you know, on a regular basis. And frankly, I want to tell you sort of a story about free speech that's really a little peculiar. We believe in free speech at all of our companies, and we have, you know, thousands literally of folks walking around bumping into each other at our various venues. And in the old days, when they would say at a meeting or in one of these conferences, "I don't know," you know, we would sort of let that roll, because that meant you were ignorant. And you can cure ignorance with education, okay? But today, when they say, "I don't know," it means a completely different thing, okay? It means that you came into a meeting and you were intent on wasting my time, okay? You didn't do the preparation. You didn't do the work of getting ready. So you wasted all the time of these other people sitting around, okay? And, you know, we don't think that that's the way that businesses going forward are going to have the time or the resources or the patience to deal with, okay? There's always excuses, okay? But there's no such thing in our world as a good excuse. And worse, when you blame other people, you know, when you say, "Well, I could have done it," but you give up your own ability to make important change within your organizations. And so we blame people, but we don't blame them for failure. Here's what we blame them for, and this is what you want in every part of your organization, okay? We blame them for basically not helping and for not asking for help, because a whole lot of people are drowning today and they just are afraid, embarrassed, concerned about admitting it, and so they make foolish mistakes or they're not prepared to do what they need to do, and if they would just ask for help, then it would be a completely different world. You can improve performance dramatically by just having an open organization. This is one of the things that's so interesting about Balloon. I mean, it surfaces concerns that nobody would say out loud at a meeting. Nobody would say, you know, I just don't know how to use this thing, because they don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to be too woke, not woke enough, you know, too far ahead of the pack, behind the pack. So meetings are going to be toast, and believe me, as we go into this post-COVID world, when people come back, the office is going to be a war zone for a period of time until we figure out what you can talk about anymore and what is now no longer permissible. I think sports are still safe. Okay, next. Do not put lipstick on a pig. What does that mean? Please don't try to do things cheaply that you shouldn't do at all, okay? Bad decisions, you know, trying to do it halfway, make you feel good in the short run. But here's something that you want to tell everybody that works for you. Please don't say maybe when you owe me a no, okay? This is all window dressing. This is all lipstick on a pig. So the secret is, you know, again, time-based. What do I have to do now? And I have to do it really well and focus on it and get it done. And what can I put off? And it turns out half the crises in our life, if we put them off for a few months, it turns out that they disappear, okay? Next is mistakes, okay? Don't be afraid to change your mind. Steve Jobs was a friend of mine. I'm 77. I want you to understand that. I've been around doing business for 50 years now. He was a great liar. He hated for me to call him a liar, but he was a great liar. And you could have a document, you could have it sworn in blood that he said this and said that, and you would try to hold him to it, and he would simply answer, really an interesting answer. He said, we're doing what's right for today, for the company, for the business, okay? We don't believe in albatrosses. We don't believe in ancient history. We don't believe in sunk costs, okay? Because you can't do that, okay? You can't run your business basically looking at through the back rearview mirror, okay? And every athlete knows this, okay? Every jock in the world knows that you have to have in-game amnesia. What does that mean? It means if you're worrying about the last shot, you're not paying attention to the next shot. If you're worrying about a bad call by the referee, you're not focused, okay? You're not on the case. And so, as Ted Lasso would say, be a goldfish, okay? It's embarrassing, but true, okay? And entrepreneurs are specifically really good at this, and they don't frankly remember yesterday because they're so focused on tomorrow. They understand that you're going to make mistakes, you want to correct them, you want to learn from them, okay? But here's the bottom line of all of this. Being smart is not to be flawless, okay? It's not to never make a mistake. It's basically to learn from the bad ones and make the best of them you can. You don't have to be the best of everything. You just have to make the best of everything. And I was a lawyer for 10 years, and I suffered from lawyer's disease. And lawyer's disease is this, okay? Which is lawyers believe that you have to be right all the time, okay? No one is, okay? The game is to win. The game is to win the battle, okay? It's not to be right all the time. And if you're trying to be right all the time, you're going to be too slow, too cautious, too misdirected, a bad manager, the whole 9 yards. So, thank you very much.
So we have a little bit of time for Q&A, and we have a couple people that will circulate with microphones.
All right, in my vast stage management experience, Blake, I've discovered the only time people are willing to ask questions is when you bring the house lights up.
So if that's possible, we'll try that. In the meantime, I'll get the ball rolling. And Howard, as we come out of the pandemic and people start returning to work, you talked a little bit about the workforce and the environment at the office. What do you think the biggest logistical challenges will be, and what do you think the biggest cultural challenges will be for companies as they welcome people back?
Well, I think the logistics are going to be what's the work week going to look like. I think that companies are going to have to get relatively comfortable with a 3 or 4 day work week, and employers are going to be able to have some fluidity, because what we've learned is that our work shouldn't drive our life should sort of drive our work. And so this luxury of being home for dinner, able to take the kids to certain medical things, all of this stuff, this new work week, this new construct is going to be different. Now, the good news is we're so connected that we can do that relatively painlessly. So I think the logistics are going to take a little while, but they're going to be a hybrid workforce going forward, bar none. And companies are going to have to learn one very significant trick, which is please don't tell the people just to come into the office, okay? You need to have a reason. You need to have an event, an educational session, a work session, something, because if you just tell them to show up, they're going to say, well, there's no reason, there's no driving need for me to show up. So you're going to have to figure that out, okay? Now, I just released this morning, it's on my Inc.com column, something about getting back to the office, when we do get back to the office, and it's about water cooler conversations, which are, by the way, the singly most powerful distribution system for information in any business that we know of, and those are changing too, in a lot of ways, okay? The folks around the water cooler are gonna be different folks. Newbies, people you've never met, people whose life experiences have been radically different from yours, okay? Some good, some bad, some believe in masks, some hate vax, some people have lost people in their own lives, okay? This is not sort of casual chat, okay? So companies are gonna have to figure out, how am I gonna manage the list, and it's not just pronouns, by the way, how am I gonna manage the list of all the things that really aren't advancing the getting of business done at the office, and figure out what's gonna replace that, or just how we're not gonna have those conversations. And as I said, I think sports is fine. I think sports will continue to be okay. But a lot of other topics that were sort of good for casual conversations, and this is gonna impact meetings too. I think we need to understand what's going on, because if you're in a meeting with a bunch of people, and the custom 2 years ago was a certain kind of frivolity or casualness, now you really have to worry and wonder about, am I offending somebody? Am I saying something that's inappropriate? And not grossly inappropriate, because that's not the standard anymore. The standard is you cross the line by like 1/5 of an inch and oh my God, So I'm concerned about that. And I think that we're gonna have to set some rules. And then lastly, and again, a very hard issue, especially for a media company, is, and Disney is the case in point here, what's the company's position going to be on some of these issues, okay? Is the company going to be able to get away with saying, we don't have a position on that? And with a new workforce that's coming in, you may not be able to pull that off. You may not be able to do that. So the company's going to have to decide, how as a company, express opinions on some of these very touchy subjects. Because if we don't, this new workforce, this workforce that brings their whole self, whatever that means, to work, is going to be much more challenging for us to work with and to deal with.
Great. Anyone? Come on. Over here.
A lot of us have to deal with the younger generation. Could you talk a little bit about your experience with the millennials versus perhaps some other generations?
I think that with millennials, the singly most important thing that we have to do is explain to them that there's a reason we call it work, okay? And you don't get what you wish for, you get what you work for. And tough, if that doesn't work for you, find another place to work, okay? If we're not prepared to sign up for basically that you have to work, then all of the ping pong tables, all the foosball stuff, all of the other stuff, it just doesn't cut it. It just doesn't cut it, because if you really believe in your mission and in what's going on in your office, and you really believe that work is what gets stuff done, then you have to live that. And I think the interesting thing is that they back off. You know, they come out of these bullshit college environments that tell them that they're in the driver's seat, they're in charge of everything, they're invaluable. And you know what? I just don't buy it. And I mean, I deal with them every single day. We have hundreds, thousands of them. And we just tell them that in our culture, and by the way, culture is going to be very difficult to restore for newbies when you've never even met them. I mean, you know, BCG, one of our clients for the consulting businesses that we do, they've brought in 2 whole classes of consultants who've never met anybody. They've never been in the office. So how their culture is going to be extended, all I know is the hook you can start with is work. And from there, everything else can be sort of a factor, it can be a conversation. But if they don't believe in putting their head down and getting the day-to-day stuff done, then they're not going to be successful in these organizations. So.
Anybody over here?
So I'm working on a new technology, by the way, that lets your phone be the microphone so we don't have to wait for him to run all the way across. It'll be here next year.
I'm Albert Gutierrez. I'm general manager in Abilene and San Angelo. And I wanted to ask you something. This is more of a bit of an advice, you know, from your perspective. So people are craving for attention, and you explained that. And all of them are wanting the attention now. We talked about time. Time is precious commodity for all of us, right? But how can we balance the time and, of course, prioritizing and ensuring that we're giving everybody the attention that they want, you know, especially that young force? You know, they seem to want the attention. They want to get to that right now. And a vast majority of the time goes to spending that time and giving them that attention. So from your perspective, what kind of advice can you give us there? How can we prioritize that and keep that balance so that we can continue to do the productive things that we need to be doing? Now, mind you, that's important, obviously. The workforce is important for us, but, you know, balancing that.
Well, look, I think there's never enough time to do everything. So so as I said, we focus on a few things. On the people issue, I think what you want to do is you can't trade the time in the day with 47 people. You don't have 47 people's times, you know, an hour for every one of them. So I think what you have to do is trade attention for the other benefits and the other commitments that you're making to them. And so, you know, you want to have a program that says, here's how we're going to educate you, here's how career advancement is going to work, here's how we're going to make you a lifelong learner, here's how we're going to educate you in new opportunities, here's how we're going to move you around and expose you to additional people in the organization. All of those are messages that say, I'm valuing you and I'm paying attention to you, but I'm not going to take 2 hours out of my day at random and have somebody stop by and, you know, unload their life story to me. It just doesn't work. And so, again, you know, these are just concrete, objective things, and I have faith that a significant portion of the people you want to employ are going to get that. And the rest of them, you know, I mean, I wish them good luck as an influencer for whatever. You know, look, I mean, there's a lot of people who just think that the jobs are just out there begging and waiting for them, and frankly, hope is not a good strategy. It's just not.
I think I saw one over here.
Thank you, Gary. Howard, it seems like today, no matter what you buy online, in a store, be it a cheeseburger or a $40,000 automobile, you get a survey.
Yep.
And what I find bewildering about all this phenomena is it's a one-way street. They're asking you questions, they're asking for your time, you give all this information, and invariably, you never hear another word. You can complain, you can say it's the worst company, I would never recommend this to my worst enemy. No one ever calls and said, gee, let's talk about this. And I noticed on one of your slides, you mentioned feedback, how important this
Sure.
feedback is for managing our businesses going forward. Is there something on the horizon that's going to resolve this? I mean, I must have on my laptop right now 20 different companies asking me to fill out a survey, and I just refuse to because what's in it for me?
Well, first of all, I'll tell you that, again, Balloon is a very important technology because it lets the youngest person in the company see that their idea is being surfaced to the senior management of the organization. So one, they're being listened to, and then two, God knows if it's adopted, that's the feedback that you're looking for, okay? So that's a process answer. I told you that I represent, 22,000 car dealers in my life, and I'll tell you just two quick stories. I'm being sensitive to the time. One is that the car dealers have gotten ahead of this survey issue by saying to you, begging you, bring your car in for a free car wash before the survey comes from J.D. Powers, and give me all 5s, and whatever, or all 10s and stuff like that. But we built a business that made 6 million phone calls to customers on behalf of car dealers, actually on behalf of the manufacturers, to ask about the satisfaction that they had, exactly the service you're talking about, but this was on the phone. And we then created results and said, here's what's working and here's what's not working. And we gave those to these dealerships and to these manufacturers. And by and large, our people would then wait, our own people would wait for changes and results and feedback. And the dealers never did a thing, okay? Because the dealers measure their business by sales and volume. And we could not convince them that doing a better job with your customers, and especially today they think they're doing you a favor to just charge you $10,000 over list. So forget car dealers, okay? But as far as in general goes, again, I think what you need to do is, build a loop that in some way manifests, the feedback. And nobody has done it yet, other than a couple of these services that we're talking about. And basically what we're saying is, we're going to show you by action that you're being listened to, because people do want to be listened to. But look, the survey thing is basically off the charts. I mean, it's not meaningful. And by the way, I mean, the truth is that 80% of the people that respond, generally with crayons, are the people who are angry people, okay? They're never the happy customers. I mean, angry people tell 10 times more people about their problems than the happy people do, who just take it for granted. I don't know what to say. I mean, I can tell you 1,000 stories from, the various industries, restaurants, same thing. So, okay, I think we're dead on time.
Yeah, we're about out of time. Howard is going to be here for lunch and a little bit of time afterwards if you want to try and catch up with him. I want to thank you for being here. Thanks. Thank you for leading this session. Please, another round of applause for Howard.
Thank you. Thank you.